Okay, let's see. Maybe I don't even need to pull that up very close. I think I'll do that. I'm excited about being here and telling you about the program that I co-direct with my colleague, nurse practitioner Anna Struhler, and a really large interprofessional team. And we really love the work we do, and I'm excited to talk to you about huddles today. I want to say that I'm fortunate that I don't have to tell you a lot about huddles. I have to tell you a lot about huddles, but not how important it is to have team-based care. I think we've heard the benefits of team-based care. I'm going to talk about actually how you might implement high-functioning teams using huddles. So that's really what I'm talking about. I want to acknowledge that I'm part of one of 7 centers of excellence across the country funded by the Office of Academic Affiliations in the VA. And that we as a group have been doing a lot of innovations, and huddles are just one of several elements that we have, key elements that we have really initiated to really teach this team-based care. So I don't want you to believe that this just huddles are going to solve all of your problems, but there's a lot more information on the internet. Right now, our Centers of Excellence actually have just published in the IHI Better Care Playbook about our teamwork, and you can hear about initiatives other than huddles. Our particular Center of Excellence really has spent time and invested in and studied how huddles can enhance and streamline team-based care as a venue for improving and addressing clinical care, team communication, and quality and safety. And so I'm hoping you'll get a lot out of this talk. So why should we huddle, the San Francisco VA Huddle Coaching Program? So what is a huddle? Does anybody here huddle? Raise your hand if you've been in a huddle. All right, we got some huddlers here. Okay, I was actually at lunch and I was hearing about, and this is a story I commonly hear, we've huddled, but it's a little challenging. So I'm hoping today I'm going to solve your huddling problems. So some people might think that a huddle is something between a group hug and a meeting, and I would agree with that, actually. Our huddles have evolved to that. Others might talk about it being something a football team does when they need to strategize their next play. But what I'm talking about here today is really a brief face-to-face meeting among a primary care team members to coordinate care. Pardon me. What I also want to say is I'm going to talk about primary care team huddles, but a lot of these principles will apply to almost any type of huddle. We have other huddles. We have inpatient huddles. We have clinic-wide huddles. So think about these principles and how you might apply them to your own personal setting. So I would say most people would agree that the purpose of a huddle is really to improve quality patient care. Really, it provides an opportunity for structured opportunities for teams to communicate. They can communicate the daily schedule, the workflow, patient special needs, and also do some pre-visit planning for upcoming visits. But it also provides a safe space where team members can voice concerns and work together as a team. I think a lot of people don't realize, and I think this is actually pretty critical for today. We've heard a lot about how important relationships are to wellness. And so this is an opportunity, these huddles are to build the relationships among the team members. And in a positive feedback mechanism, they actually then allow the many team members to actually voice concerns when there's more psychological safety. So think of huddles as an opportunity for this relationship building. I want to also let you know, from my perspective as an educator, it really is an amazing opportunity for education, to teach, to model, and reinforce teamwork competency. So if you're here with your academic hat on and you're teaching interprofessional learners, I want your ears to perk up because this is a great opportunity for that. So what about our huddles? You can see a picture there in the top right corner. Who participates in our huddles? We have RNs, LVNs, and clerks or clerical associates. We also have the primary care providers, which are the second-year residents, so the R2, and a nurse practitioner student. These are UCSF trainees that are actually I'm coaching. Now, this also applies, our faculty also huddle, but I'm talking about our interprofessional learners. But you see, of course, the patient is there at the center. We always want to keep the eye on that prize. Patients aren't typically in our huddles, but I just wanted to remind you that that's what we're talking about, and how our huddles might differ from huddles you've tried to initiate in your own settings is that we actually add a coach, a huddle coach. And we actually figured this out when we started our huddles, when we received our grant, and we're like, okay, we're going to jump in and huddle. we had a lot of trouble making those huddles happen, just like maybe you're having. And so we really instituted having coaches. And so that's what I'm really going to talk about today. We've also, throughout the years, have added other interprofessional learners, include pharmacy residents, social work trainees, and mental health providers, primary care psychology fellows. So this is the group of folks that are actually in the room in the huddle. Here is a picture of a huddle. Here you can see a nurse practitioner student at the computer, a resident looking over her shoulder, the RN, the LVN, and the clerk in the room. And then I'm also there. I'm the person taking the picture. I'm the huddle coach. This is Team D. This is my team. And so what we're actually doing is we're basically enabling or actually, doing what's on this huddle checklist. This is not meant for you to read, but just to let you know, when we start huddles, we actually use the checklist. We hand it out to everyone, anyone who's new, and we actually use it as a quality improvement tool. So what's really happening here, the very first thing is the check-in, and I really want to say that the first secret sauce is the huddle coach. The second secret sauce is the check-in, especially as regarding provider wellness. And it really has made a huge difference. I did not know when I started huddling 10 years ago that this was really going to be the most important thing. But we spend time committing to checking in. All huddles are different. All huddles are maybe led by different groups. I know right now I have a nurse practitioner student who's very engaged, and she likes to start the huddle off. And her huddle check-in last week was, I'm wondering if we can all share something we're all struggling with and what we are doing in our own lives to improve our resilience. Wow. I didn't say that, she did. And it was incredibly powerful. We learned that our MSA father had just died and that she was struggling after getting some radiation. These are things that she had not shared with us, but that specific question, she actually divulged that. And so we can support her and she can support us when we're having our own struggles. So that's just the very first thing that happens. This huddle lasts about 15 minutes, just to give you some guidance. And that check-in can last literally 5 minutes, but be very powerful. I've had teams where they've done the check-in of the dance of the week, like literally somebody got up and did a dance. Favorite restaurants, song of the week, and bring your music and play it. So anyway, the check-in's important. Then we start off with the LVN actually reviews the agenda items of the patient. She's made those pre-visit calls and reports out the agenda items. The RN then talks about, she scrubbed the records for the future visits of patients coming next week, and she reviews those and any concerns she has. And then it's followed by the MSA getting an opportunity to talk about, well, I've noticed that Mr. Jones is scheduled again next week. Did you really want him to come here? Can we move him out and put in Mr. Smith, who was just discharged from the hospital? I did fail to mention that the RN really talks about some of our high utilizers, so patients who, for example, are just discharged or who need home care. What I haven't talked about yet is the role of the coach. That's an important job, and these are all the different roles of the coach. Now, I'm imagining you're sitting here saying, oh, this is all great, but where in the world does that coach come from? In our medical center, this is a training clinic, so coaches are the actual preceptors of the day, but you could imagine you could have a champion who could volunteer to be that coach. The coach has many roles, include monitoring. I would say that's probably their first role. When you initiate huddles, the huddle coach is actually also called the cat herder. So what happens is people are not now necessarily invested in this huddle. They have forgotten when their huddle time is. They actually got to walk in, so they need to see that walk in. The RN will say, the LVN will say, well, somebody's got to do the vital signs. And your job as the coach is to say, maybe Paul can do that vital sign check. Maybe do you think your patient could wait 5 or 10 more minutes and you can actually join our huddle? So really getting them into the room. It's also modeling, demonstrating skills and techniques, everything from quality communication techniques like checkbacks and IS bars, to also how you respond when one of your team members divulges something really important, like I am. I'm having radiation therapy, or my father just died. Sometimes the trainees or staff are just not sure what to say. You as a coach can role model, I am so sorry to hear that. Is there something that we can do to help you? So even just very basic things you can be a role model for. You're also a motivator. You can tell I have a cheerleader spirit. This is a good job for me. So I like to motivate. I think at the end, I love to say at the end of the huddle, wow, I really liked how we did X. I really loved that check back. I really liked how we surrounded our MSA to support her, and I'm so glad that we did that check-in. I do a lot of guiding and supporting. I try to keep my mouth shut as much as possible, but if needed, I am there to answer questions like, How do we get that travel consult? How do we do, can we do telemedicine? How do we get this patient into a homeless pact, which is a question that came up last week. I do a lot of teaching, everything from, so what antibiotic should I use for this patient who sounds like might be coming in with cellulitis, so kind of the trainees are wondering what that might be ahead of time, to systems improvement issues, to really communication. I do teaching on all of that. And then finally, giving feedback. So we actually use that huddle checklist, certainly at the beginning of huddles, to really document. At the top, it will say who is there. You can check the box. Was the LVN there? Was the RN there? Who was actually there? In the first, several months, I save those, and I also at the bottom, so that's kind of like a quality control. I say who was actually. There's a box to check that everybody came prepared. Did the RN scrub? Did the LVN make the phone calls? So it's just like a very objective quality improvement tool, and at the end, some positive reinforcement. And we, after 3 months or 2 months, can look at it and just share the data. And you don't have to say anything. Someone say, "Wow, it's been hard for me to get to the huddle. I wonder." If maybe you could help me make sure that I'm freed up during that time, Dr. Shunk. So these are some things that happen when you're in the huddle and the role of the huddle coach. So finally, this is my last slide. We actually used a framework to think about how to create this huddle coaching program, and I'm wondering if you might think about how this could help you. Our framework was actually based on Reeves and Gattel's framework for relational modeling. But basically, there's structural interventions, relational interventions, and process interventions. So, for example, structure, we actually had to create a schedule, like literally, this is your huddle time, and we had to negotiate that with leadership, and we designated a space, an actual room. We made relational interventions. So not only do we have a check-in with in our huddles, but we also have a team retreat. After they've been able to struggle for 2 months, we actually have a team retreat where we all get together and talk about how we're doing. And then we also debrief those meetings. And finally, we actually have some process interventions. The coach is one of those process interventions, but we also have the checklist. And then also, all those preceptors, those huddle coaches actually go into the preceptor room where they actually talk about how they did. So we're holding each of the champions accountable. So these are just some ways that we've been able to actually create a huddle coaching program, and I hope that some of these might resonate with you. Thank you.